Welcome to this episode of Reheated Turkeys, my series that nobody watches, but I love anyway. In case you don't know what the purpose of this series is, it's actually to take movies that I haven't seen for about 20 years or so, but I remember them as being pretty damn good, and I'm going to rewatch them after all this time to find out if they hold up to what my memory is, and my memory sucks. So let's see if this movie holds up. It's Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama. And that is a title. They don't make titles like that anymore. If they do, they're self-referential. This title was, I guess, serious? Maybe not. Could have been a joke at the time. I don't know. I've seen this movie probably 20 times, but I haven't seen this movie since sometime, probably in the early 90s is probably the last time I saw this movie. So it's been a very, very long time. So let's dig in and see if it still holds up. Okay, so this movie's only an hour and 18 minutes, so this should be pretty easy. The opening theme song sounds like a modern band doing their interpretation of what an 80s theme song would sound like. It's so perfect. We meet three college nerd guys, including Rick from Nightmare 4 and Stooge, and watch this.
So I got out the peanut butter, pulled out my John Thomas, and did...
First of all, he's clearly not saying this.
So I got out the peanut butter, pulled out my John Thomas, and did...
Secondly, I got out the peanut butter and pulled out my John... What? Meanwhile, sorority pledges Brink Stevens and Michelle Bauer are here because they're new to college. Come on, they're in their 30s. I'm not even being mean here. They were both literally in their 30s when they shot this. Brink was 34, while Michelle was 30. There's an extended shower scene, although I hesitate to call it a shower since it's just like a tub with no curtain or anything. I mean, who has a shower like this, and aren't they worried about getting water all over the floor? After they catch these peeping toms, they send them and the initiates to a local bowling alley to break in and steal a trophy. And, you know, I was kind of doubting the authenticity of this scene, so I had to reach out to my wife, Christy, who was in a sorority in college.
I think it's time for whipped cream delight.
Whipped cream? That ought to cool them off.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's only 3 members of the sorority present, 2 pledges, and a ton of whipped cream. This is completely accurate.
So the bowling alley is in a mall, and the late Buck Flower works there. And they also run into Trash, who's actually Spider here, and had also just turned 30, although at least she's not supposed to be a college girl. They break open a trophy and release this guy, the Imp, who I guess was trapped in there. You know, the bowling trophy. Impy says he'll grant them all one wish, so Jimmy goes first and wishes for gold, while Keith wishes for sex, which he's granted in the locker room. Wait, why does the bowling alley have a locker room? Is that a thing? I mean, you could say that it's a part of the mall, but what mall has a locker room? I'm chalking this one up to my lack of bowling alley knowledge, and I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me if this is actually weird or not. Also, I want to point out that his wish was for sex, and it somehow included Michelle Bauer. I mean, what was her wish? I guess she didn't get a choice, but to be a part of his wish. Taffy wishes to be prom queen, which consists of wearing a dress and dancing in a circle. What kept her from doing this at home? She's not at a prom, she's just wearing a prom dress and crown. He changes 2 of the sorority girls into monsters, and the wishes start to come undone, and how unfair is this? One girl gets transformed into the Bride of Frankenstein, complete with hair and wardrobe, while the other one just gets some acne all over her face. It was like they had all this time and energy and money and budget, and they spent it all on the Bride of Frankenstein girl, and they finished her up, and then they realized that, oh geez, we have this other girl monster, and then they just kind of like threw something together in 5 minutes, and they were just like, cool. They kill Jimmy and bowl with his head, and then they deep fry Keith, and then split Brink in half. They show it like this. See? Half is here, and the other half is over here. It's definitely not 2 different people with half of their bodies obscured by this wall here, conveniently covering the gross parts that would include special effects. Speaking of effects, maybe close-ups of the Imp weren't such a great idea, because the more we see it, the more we notice it barely moves. I guess you could say it was okay for 1988, but I saw this in 1988, and no, it wasn't. Our heroes kill one of the monster girls via bowling ball, and again, just trust us that something happened here. I mean, we're just gonna put a girl on the ground and put the ball next to her head, and you figure out the rest. We find out that the imp has been imprisoned for 30 years in an origin story that I kept waiting for them to show flashbacks for, but again, that would require some money. So it's just told to us, but it's in Buck Flower's golden voice, so I'm cool with it. Head bitch girl Babs also gets possessed and turned into a dominatrix, I guess, and if the imp has the ability to just do that to people, then why is there even a problem here? Can he just do this whenever he wants? As seen earlier, he doesn't even have to be in the person's presence to do it, so why doesn't he just take over everyone? They set Babs on fire. I mean, I think it's Babs, but a tiny, scantily clad woman suddenly seems double in size and wearing a lot more clothing as she burns. They manage to escape the mall, but...
Monster in the back seat! Yo, let's drink in the book!
You know, that's like the one single thing that I remembered about this movie, that line of dialogue. I've even quoted that line. I've actually just said, monster in the back seat, oh, let's drink in the book. Like, whenever I'm watching another movie and there's a monster in the back seat. I don't know why, but that has stuck with me for some reason. Finally, Linnea just kind of walks up behind the imp and covers him with this bucket. And this stops him. He was omniscient enough to know that they would somehow get outside and go right for this car so that he could set up having Rhonda in the car waiting, but not enough to know that a woman is walking up right behind him. Oh, and then they just leave the imp there under the can on the side of the road. Look at it. Look. It's just there. Just there on the sidewalk. As if someone isn't going to uncover that in like 15 minutes. Earlier in the movie, they made fun of the janitor for just leaving the trophy there so that anyone could set the imp free and made it seem like he was to blame for the whole situation, and now look. So, in the process of editing this film, I also made a fun discovery. Apparently, there's going to be a Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama Part 2 as part of the Full Moon's Deadly 10 films. It looks like it's bringing back David Ducato to direct, and it looks as if all 3 Sorority Babes will be back. Linnea Quigley, Frank Stevens, and Michelle Bauer will all reunite for this film. There's literally very little information about it out there. There's no IMDb page. I just found a couple of random notes about it. Apparently it's going to be out on February 14th, 2020, and that's coming right up. So I guess we'll see if this is real or not. So there you have it. It's Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama, directed by the amazing David Ducato, who I surprisingly haven't covered a lot of his films so far in my channel. I mean, he's done a couple of the ones, but not as many as probably he could. Now, I will probably be getting a little bit more into his movies at some point later on. I know he's got a couple of really low budget series that I can cover at some point, and I will be getting more into them. But for this was actually a lot of fun. I mean, it is probably a quintessential bad 80s horror comedy. It was a lot of fun, really stupid, very, very low budget. I mean, this felt like it was shot on like a weekend with just whatever props people had laying around. But it was competently made. There's a big difference between like low budget crap movies from the 80s and low budget crap movies now. There actually seemed to be some time, energy, and talent put into them. And this one had some of those things. Maybe just not enough. But it's still a ton of fun. If you haven't seen this movie, it's definitely fun. It like I said about the theme song, this movie feels like the type of movie somebody would make right now if they were trying to make fun of 80s movies. And it feels like it's almost poking fun of itself in the same tone. It just really is fun. There's really not much more words I can use for it except for I don't know, crappy, but it's a good kind of crappy, and I recommend it. If you like bad, cheesy, silly movies, check this one out. There's a lot of nudity. It's not the best nudity, but it's there. Special effects are there. They're not very special. They are kind of funny. And again, this is one of those things of where the kind of the rock bottom special effects now, back then, were actually still a little bit more advanced. These effects in the 80s weren't good, but they definitely weren't like cheap, no budget, bottom of the barrel. there was still, again, some sort of time and energy, because it wasn't just like you could throw some CGI up there and call it a day. The imp had to be made and puppeted and constructed and all that good stuff. So there is some effort. All said and done, this one is a good reheated turkey, and I would probably recommend that you check it out if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, and maybe you haven't seen it in a while, it's worth a rewatch. You will not besmirch your memory of this film. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this one. The 50 of you that will watch this episode, again, this series is just not that popular. But maybe you can help it become more popular by sharing it out there on the social media. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, all that good stuff. And check out my patrons over here. These guys help support the channel and all that normal stuff. And I'll see you in a little while for another great video. Thanks, guys. Bye.